Instead of focusing on expression, we're going to talk about cognition. The idea is simple. Communication only works if the human brain can process what we're saying. That means that communication is not just about confidence, charisma, or vocabulary. It's about attention, memory, prediction, and a lot about cognitive load. So our understanding is constrained by how our brain works. We're going to have a look at communication in terms of its system design, as it were. What happens when communication respects the way people actually process meaning, and what happens when it ignores that? Communication is not just a stylistic issue, it's not just cosmetic, it's about clarity. And when communication is vague or too abstract or overloaded with terms that no one understands, people really struggle to process it. It means they find it hard to keep their attention or even kind of decide whether they agree or not. So it's really important in any presentation to manage the cognitive load and think about how people are encoding what you're saying. So in this slide, we're going to illustrate what happens to many organisations every day. There are large volumes of disconnected information being pushed towards the audience through dense slides with a lot of abstract terms used, and often the context is missing. The assumption is that people have unlimited bandwidth, but they don't. The result is overload. The brain spending its energy trying to understand the structure instead of understanding meaning. Information becoming fragmented and people being unable to retain the main ideas. That's why sometimes people leave a meeting with lots of information but absolutely no clarity. It's really a question of the architecture of our brains and the way we understand things. Let's look at the cognitive stages in understanding. First, receptivity. Before we understand anything, we need to be psychologically open to it. Then, processing. The message has to respect attentional and working memory limitations. Finally, comprehension. New information has to connect to existing knowledge. And we have to encode the information strongly so that it can be accessible later. A lot of communication failures happen because we only focus on transmission. We think if we say something, it means people have understood it and it's retained. But communication is a cognitive sequence. Human cognition is deeply social. When people feel threatened, judged, overloaded, the brain becomes more defensive. People filter things and become less receptive. That's what the cognitive shield up image represents. By contrast, when communication creates psychological safety, trust, and relational alignment, we are much more open to processing information. This is very important in leadership, learning, change management, and international communication. People don't process information in a vacuum. Social context can change our understanding. The brain filters out a lot of information, most of it, in fact. For something to be learned, it has to be noticed. Meaningful contrast cuts through this corporate noise that we can hear in the background. Strategic contrast, emotional salience, and contextual meaning interrupt all that automatic filtering, and that's how you can connect your ideas to people. Conscious noticing is necessary before information can be internalized. So kind of the generic communication, the generic terms fall into the background. And when things feel a bit unexpected or relevant to you personally, or surprising or meaningful, then we remember them. we do have the constraints of our working memory. We can't process lots of information simultaneously. When it's unstructured or not very well sequenced, we're very quickly saturated. So putting things into clear chunks or chunking is a very good idea. If you explain the structure first and then give one main idea at a time, people can focus on meaning and not just get stuck on your structure trying to understand it. So organizing ideas cognitively makes you get much more impact. People trust information that's easier to process. It's called processing fluency. When syntax is clear and structure is visible and vocabulary is familiar, then there's less friction in our brains, and that reduction in effort creates a feeling of coherence and credibility. So if you remove unnecessary processing obstacles, then people are going to understand you much more easily and therefore remember your message. So the goal is to stop wasting cognitive resources on decoding avoidable complexity. In spoken English, our meaning is also carried through our rhythm and stress patterns, English being a stress-timed language. So using prominence, pauses or pacing and contrast is important. And when speech is flat or overloaded, it becomes, again, very difficult to understand. So speech rhythm is a way of gaining attention by slowing down key information, showing contrast, reducing the words that are not important, and using pauses strategically. You can really improve your spoken communication. Because human cognition is constantly evaluating whether information is worth the effort required to process it. It's called relevance theory. Audiences are asking themselves, why does this matter? What does it change? What does it mean for me? And when communication creates high effort with low perceived relevance, disengagement occurs immediately. So you have to maximize meaning and minimize unnecessary processing cost. People understand new information by connecting it to what they already know. Without those cognitive bridges, unfamiliar concepts remain isolated and difficult to remember. So analogies, metaphors, comparisons, and concrete ideas make it much, much easier for everyone to follow what you're saying. Good communication activates learning patterns, and when you're explaining something really technical, like a transformation or something new, you need to establish these patterns. Our brain is always generating predictions about incoming information. So we're kind of managing our expectations all the time. If information is too predictable, we just get bored and stop listening. If it's too unpredictable or chaotic, it's exhausting us. So you have to find something, some middle ground, where what you're saying is familiar enough to be coherent, also structured, but then introducing novelty and surprise to maintain engagement. So it's a balance between prediction and surprise, and it's how you get audience attention. Abstract language is very difficult to retain. It lacks sensory structure. So if you give examples that make people connect on a human level or connect it to something they already know, relate to and understand, it's cognitively stronger. People can mentally simulate what you're saying. Concrete imagery always creates richer encoding pathways in memory. This connects to something called dual coding, which suggests that something like an abstract word, if it's connected to an image, it helps us to understand. We think in a way that's about Causality, what's the consequences for us? How does it link to our human experience? It's another reason why storytelling works so well, because narratives create coherence between events. They allow audiences to mentally simulate situations. This means that if you manage to embed data in the middle of something humanly understandable, people can, well, it's kind of common sense, but people can connect to that if they can relate to it. So instead of focusing just on your internal priorities and your strategy with lots of abstract vocabulary and data, shift towards making it relevant to your listener. Use concrete examples, logical chunks, a structure, narrative contrast. Design your communication around the processing needs of your audience, not just the information habits of your organization. This is that makes a big difference in creating understanding. Certain features create cognitive friction, missing context, dense slides, unfamiliar vocabulary, flat pacing, or threatening social dynamics. Others increase fluency, clear relevance, analogies, balanced novelty, psychological safety. Communication succeeds when the audience spends its energy understanding ideas rather than fighting the structure of the message itself. So, in summary, the human brain is powerful but is constrained in its architecture. Our attention is limited, working memory is limited, processing is emotional, predictive, and social. Communication becomes much more effective when it respects those realities. The goal is alignment between the design of your message and human cognitive architecture. If you respect the hardware that people are born with, people can understand more clearly, remember more deeply, and in fact, act more effectively.